Hey everybody, Monica Guzman coming to you live all this week, Monday through Friday, close to 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time as possible. Getting set up here. If you can hear the birds, they're singing today. So feel free to enjoy them. It's these birds that have a long tail, but I don't think they're blue jays. But they have a long tail and thin legs, long thin legs, and they sing a lot. And they're out there today. It's just nice to hear nature as opposed to the traffic, the sounds of traffic, or it's really the sounds of traffic that make the most noise, right? And then also with all the California fires that have been happening over the last several years, the animals move, right? Their trees, their former, their trees, their former homes got burnt, so they've migrated to other parts of California. And I think that's why we've ended up with squirrels in the area over the last few years, and then different types of birds. There's this tiny black one with he's usually got a white chest. I had never seen that before in this area. So it's just, I don't know. It's good to be around nature. Hang on. So in October, when I'm not streaming, I'm going to figure out all this stuff. I know there's a way to prevent the microphone from capturing so much background noise. And there's a lot of noises again today. Okay, we're good. So this week I'm talking about American history, and I'm bringing in some world history. I feel like there's a disconnect in America between its history and what's happening in 2021. It's a little bit daunting that, hang on. Give me 1 second. Because I'm not sure what that is. All right, we're good. Sorry about that. Um, so there seems to be a disconnect between the parallels of American history and what's happening in 2021. It is insane how closely everything that's happening right now happened 1763 through 1780. It's insane. It is insane what's happening right now. And so I want to just talk about it. Sometimes, it's good to bounce ideas off each other. It helps fill in gaps, stuff that you may have already been thinking about. And it just helps you, sometimes you need a different perspective, or somebody needs to say it in a different manner to help you do whatever you've been doing. And so yesterday, I started talking about, I didn't realize the, the demographics of the gators and the incels. And I want to finish up my thought on that really quick. And again, this isn't out of malice. It's just shocking. So growing up, I always gravitated toward the athletes. Those were my favorite people. I did some athletic stuff myself, but I leaned more toward ballet and jazz dance. Those were my things. And so I just enjoyed watching football and baseball more than I never had any desire to play either. Do we play pickup baseball games in school? Yes, and they were fun, but I've never felt like, ooh, I want to be a professional baseball player. Like, that was just the furthest thing from my mind. I've enjoyed watching it. And obviously, the athlete in 2021 is far different than the athlete, obviously, before the steroids era, right? You guys are full of supplements and you are full of steroids, among other things, pot, drugs. I mean, I would not hang out with the athlete of 2021, especially the younger ones. Like, you guys are just potheads. Athletes don't do that to their body. So growing up, I gravitated toward the athletes. They were my favorite people. And there were some intelligent ones amongst us in high school, college. And it has a lot to do with the fact that I knew that those guys weren't going to be doing drugs. I knew that if we hung out, they weren't going to drink. They weren't going to do drugs. They weren't going to get high. And so now this culture of degeneracy is so widespread. It's athletes and obviously everyone else. So with you guys, the internet, the digital, I'm not sure what to call you yet, but I'm going to call you digital nerds for now. I was just surprised how widespread that is. And again, white birth rates are down, so people need to stop acting stupid. That's why white birth rates are down. You've got this generation of druggies, and on the flip side, you've got a generation of whores. So your baby having age generation is either high or whoring themselves out for money. So Why are birth rates down? White birth rates down? That's why. Because they're full of drugs, they're full of alcohol, or they're too busy whoring themselves out on the internet. So the digital nerds are one side of the coin. The only fangirls are the other side. So you have a gap of people, and it's because they've descended into degeneracy. They're damaging their eggs, they're damaging their sperm. I'm not, and then, you know, I'm going to talk about the IVF thing. I don't want to say her name, but a famous sideline reporter for the NFL. She's no spring chicken. I don't remember how old she is, but somehow she's convinced that at her age she's going to give birth for the first time through IVF. What's more surprising is I don't know if her husband has any children. So it's one thing for a guy to marry a woman who's older and has never had children if he has children from a previous relationship or a previous marriage, right? So like, but to be the guy who marries old, because if you marry over 25, you run the risk of she never giving you children. That's just reality. We need to be very honest about this. So I don't know if this guy has kids from a previous relationship. If he does, then it makes sense why he chose to marry her anyway. If he doesn't, I'm sorry, I'm just really surprised that he would be okay with a woman who isn't going to give him children. That's a little shocking. But that's the era that we're in, right? Men are not as alpha-y as they used to be, right? It's different times. So basically, the digital nerds and the OnlyFans girls, you are intertwined with each other. You guys went to high school with each other, right? You went to college with each other. Your generation, unfortunately, just sucks. Like, as far as the potential for healthy relationships, for healthy children, it's just it's awful what they did to you guys. And then among your digital nerds, I've realized you have your so-called pickup guys, and you guys just turned out to be nerds too. So there's a lot of people out there right now that are just never going to have the opportunity to get into a healthy relationship. That's part of the reason why America's experiencing these low birth rates. How do you fix that? Honestly, I don't know, because for me, this is kind of Darwinist, right? Maybe your generation just wasn't meant to be the one that helps birth the alphas that America needs. Maybe we've got to go even younger. And given that the digital nerds are targeting the younger ones, I don't know how those guys are going to turn out. I can tell you, you're not getting my kid. My kid's not going to become a digital nerd who does drugs with impunity online or drinks. It's just not going to happen. That's not going to be my kid anyway. So he's going to have a healthy in real life, as far as I'm concerned. So when I hear digital nerds criticize women, you don't get to criticize someone like me. I'm living my life. I'm fulfilling my duties as a woman. You don't get to criticize someone like me. I understand if you feel anger toward the OnlyFans women. I guess those are the ones who turned you down for dates, who made you feel bad about yourself, who possibly bullied you, who, all that stuff that happens, right? I understand if you have anger toward them, but you don't get to criticize someone like me. I'm living my life in real life. I'm fulfilling my duties as a woman. It sucks. It really does suck to be you guys. I know I don't have a solution for you. You have to be the ones who take it upon yourselves to get out of your anger. Because there was one nerd on that stream who seemed particularly angry, and he did not look that old. He looked like a high schooler, but I guess he's like a college student or something. I was like, man, that is one bitter dude, and he's very young. So, I just want to finish up my thought on that. Moving on from it. So, from the World History book, I want to read something to you guys that I've read before. And this again shows we can talk about the evolution of man within the context of God created man. Because there are millions of years in between the first generations of humans, right? So according to this book, they believe that the first human, the earliest human-like creatures known as hominids, lived in Africa some 3 to 4 million years ago. So those are the first ones. And obviously, it's like the iPhone, right? Do you guys remember when the first iPhone came out? It had tons of bugs, glitches. It looked nothing like the newest iPhone in 2021. It had tons of bugs, right? It was a model to be improved on. I personally I'm not an early adopter. I didn't get my first iPhone until years later. And even then, I don't upgrade every year because I like the model that I have right now. I actually like my previous model more, but the battery stopped. You charge it and it's done half an hour later, right? It's like, oh, okay. And then what happens? You can't download the latest iOS. All the apps are engineered to work with the latest iOS, so the apps stop becoming compatible with the phone, rendering the phone pretty much useless. So that kind of sucks too. So let's see how long it takes for my current iPhone model to be rendered useless. I really don't need all the bells and whistles that are included in the latest one with the retina scan and the fingerprint scan and the voice and the cameras, but we'll see what happens. So you've got these people running around figuring out life, but they died out. Now, I read that article that talks about Africans in Africa still have a percentage in their DNA of these guys. So it makes sense why Africa is still hut-based. They don't have an irrigation system set up throughout the country or the continent. It's because they still have DNA from these guys they died out. So you can't call them the brightest, right? They died out. And so then you've got your handy human who came after possibly the first human. Homo habilis was the earliest tool-making hominoid, which had a brain almost 50% larger than that of the Australopithecines. So these generations of humans improved as they went on. The dumber ones, the original ones, had to die out to make way for the more intelligent humans. A brain 50% larger than the other generation of humans. We've got to accept that. We've got to accept that. Actually, what I wanted to start off with today was by reminding people, if you don't know your health status, you should find out as soon as possible, because we don't know where things are heading. So if you're borderline, on any chronic diseases, if you're prone to diseases, you should know how far away you are from it. We don't know what's going to happen. It's better to take care of your health status right now, as opposed to, look, if you're not proactive about yourself, you cannot expect people to feel sorry for you when everybody's going to be in the same boat. What if whatever's happening in New York with the hospitals, we don't know what that's going to lead to, right? We don't know what that's going to lead to. So if you're someone who's sick and you didn't take the time to do something about it, how do you expect people to feel sorry for you? Okay, so in the NFL, Ron Rivera had cancer. Okay, bad genes. The man ended up with cancer. Okay, it's not fair to say bad genes, because I don't know how he ended up with cancer. Did his environment cause cancer, or does cancer run in his family? So let's say that for Ron Rivera, cancer runs in his family, so he has bad genes. Okay, so he undergoes all his cancer treatment. He comes out on the other end of it still alive. Wonderful. Now, Ron Rivera expects the healthy people around him to bow down to his bad genes. Well, you know what? Maybe Ron Rivera should step down and let someone healthy handle his position. I mean, he's not a coach worth writing home about. He's not Belichick, right? And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Belichick probably has way better genes than Ron Rivera. And whatever Belichick's health status is, he's probably taking care of it. So there's this thing right now where the healthy have to bow down to the weakest among us and the sickest among us. And again, it sucks if you are prone to chronic illnesses and diseases. It sucks. It sucks that you were dealt these cards. But to stop the world for the sick is fucking insane. It's fucking insane to keep stopping the world for the sickest among us. Instead, we should help the sickest among us enjoy whatever time they have left. Help them not be a burden on society, so that the healthiest among us can continue pushing society forward, so that they can birth the next generation that will be smarter than us, healthier than us. It's insane for the weakest and the sickest among us to be the ones procreating and delivering onto the world sick children. Again, MLB loves the sick children. MLB's all about the cancer children. Instead of celebrating the healthy, they celebrate the sickest. And if you really care about the world and about children, you would be saying, how do we prevent more children from being born prone to cancer? We would be talking about prevention. That's definitely something that I'm going to be focusing on, prevention. There are bleeding hearts out there who will do their thing for sick children and sick people. But for me, I believe that it's for me to talk about prevention. How do we prevent childhood leukemia from being the biggest, or how do we just prevent the cancer rates among children from continuing to rise? How do we lower them? How do we lower that? So for Ron Rivera to be upset that his players don't want to get the vaccine because he has bad genes is fucking, I mean, are you fucking kidding me? Like, maybe he needs to retire and spend time with his family. And allow the healthiest among us to continue to thrive instead of bowing down to the weakest and the sickest. It's stupid. It's backwards. It's backwards is what I'm trying to say. That logic is extremely backwards. When the pandemic when everything finally came to the United States, because a lot of us were following it from Italy, right? That spring training game, I don't even know if Rick Monday was on site anymore, because now we know that there's the ability for games to be broadcast. Rick Monday could have been in LA, even though the game was being played in Arizona. But I did worry about Rick Monday because Rick Monday's older. And we know that older people are prone, like if they catch the flu, it very much can turn into pneumonia, right? And Rick Monday is the great baseball player who prevented the American flag from being burnt by Nicaraguans at Dodger Stadium several years ago. Rick Monday, even though he's got a Marxist side, he's also a great American. And I was like, oh my gosh, someone get Rick Monday out of there if he was in Arizona at that time. If he catches whatever's going on, we don't know if he'll recover, right? And so I was concerned about people in that sense. It's like we've got to get them away from whatever's happening, right? And Rick Monday's a great American, despite he's got a little bit of Marxist in him. So I want to remind you guys from this world history book that several types of humans have existed before us, and it took millions of years, hundreds of thousands of years in between, and each human class improved on the last. So Homo habilis had a 50% larger brain than the previous human class. And then you get, so as Homo habilis died out, a new phase in early human development occurred around 1.8 million years ago with the emergence of Homo erectus. Homo erectus made use of the larger and more varied tools and was the first hominid to leave Africa and move into Europe and Asia. Around 250,000 years ago, a third and crucial phase of human development began with the emergence of Homo sapiens, wise human. By 100,000 BCE, two groups of Homo sapiens had developed. One type was the Neanderthal, whose remains were first found in Neander Valley in Germany. Neanderthal remains have since been found in both Europe and the Middle East and have been dated between 100,000 and 30,000 BCE. Neanderthals relied on a variety of stone tools and were the first early people to bury their dead. Wow. Some scientists maintain that burial of the dead indicates a belief in an afterlife. That's interesting, right? Neanderthals in Europe made clothes from skins of animals that they had killed for food. So Germany, right? These dudes were hanging out in Germany and they were obviously very intelligent. This is the beginning of religion too, right? And the beginning of responsible hunting. Nothing goes to waste. So I maintain that America was as perfect as you can get from the landing of the Pilgrims through the beginning of World War I. And then the Jews started fleeing Germany because my assumption is that the Germans rejected whatever it is they were doing over there. They fled the bed that they had made. They brought their notion of racism to America, and they brought their diseases with them too. The BRCA gene is a Jewish thing. They have ALS is most likely a Jewish thing. HIV-1, who knows if that's a Jewish thing too. So America, here's America becoming even better than it was after the Civil War. And now you've got this different culture that knows how to infiltrate important posts in their host country and take it over. And on top of that, they're spreading around their diseases. Americans were not as sick as they are. Americans were not as sick in 1921 as they are in 2021. We know this, right? We know that a lot of other diseases came with other immigrants. Why do we have vaccines against smallpox and measles and influenza, polio, right? Because a lot of these diseases came from the old world. And so we've got everything that we've got now. So a lot of the healthcare system is being used to cure Jews. The BRCA gene stuff, that's their thing. They're using the American healthcare system to cure themselves, to attempt to make themselves stronger. It's not going to happen. Or at least it's not going to happen immediately. And while they're trying to figure it out, they're taking America down. It's not acceptable to do that. It's not acceptable to do that to people who have been living on this soil for 300 years, right? I reject it. And I reject it. Okay. The first anatomically modern humans, known as Homo sapiens, wise human, appeared in Africa between 200,000 and 150,000 years ago. Recent evidence indicates that they began to spread outside Africa around 100,000 years ago. Homo sapiens had replaced the Neanderthals, who largely became extinct. The movement of the first modern humans was rarely deliberate. Groups of people advanced beyond their old hunting grounds at a rate of only 2 to 3 miles per generation. This was enough, however, to populate the world in some tens of thousands of years. Some scholars have suggested that such advanced human creatures may have emerged independently in different parts of the world. So I was a little bit apprehensive, but that's the argument that they're trying to make. Oh, the first humans were actually African. Well, IQ says otherwise. Africa still lives in huts. Africa still doesn't have an irrigation system. Granted, the lack of modern conveniences definitely keeps them busy. And that's not the worst thing. It's the foreign aid that messes things up, right? If America was if other cultures stopped forcing America to take American tax dollars and give it to others in the form of foreign aid, the world would become smarter, right? Because it forces people to problem solve. It forces people to use their logic. It forces people to grow their brain. I mean, how much of our brain do we use in 2021? I remember 10%. I don't know if the percentages do. It's probably less. It's probably less at this point, right? Uh, so, Stefan Mullen, you talked a lot about this, and Cowherd actually proved it, right? The NFL teams that have the better records, this is in 2019. In 2019, the NFL teams who had the best records were the ones from cold climates, because those guys, it was too cold for them to go party, right? It was too cold to go to the strip bar in Atlanta and eat your chicken wings, or it's chicken wings, right? So, Tom Brady, 20 years in New England, right? Tom Brady is the rule, not the exception. And he is going, I'm not going into that game with any set of expectations. I'm going to watch it and I'm just going to watch it unfold as it unfolds. Oh, it's going to be a great game, though. I'm going to watch that game. Tom Brady versus, can we call it Tom Brady versus Belichick? And obviously we respect Bill Belichick, right? It's just, Tom Brady's the player, the dude on the field executing plays. The game's about the players, right? Not as much about the coaches. So I think Belichick would understand that. Why people we respect Michael Jordan, right? Some of y'all try to sing the praises of Phil. I think Michael Jordan was the deal. So, okay. So the movement of the first modern humans was rarely deliberate. So globalism wasn't a thing either. It's modern and it is foreign to America. Even Americans, let me read to you, a lot of reading to you guys today. Shoeless Joe Jackson, right? Toward the end of the 20th century, the rapid rise of textile mills in upstate South Carolina was a blessing to an untold number of impoverished families. The flourishing market opened the door to scores of localized facilities offering full-time work to people in need of stable incomes. These venues not only provided housing in communities built for its employees, but offered educational opportunities, churches, and organized sports. To a degree, life in these areas revolved around the mill, and the people were connected by a palpable sense of kinship. Localized jobs did this, not globalism. Not globalism. For newcomers to these budding districts, there was high optimism. And for the parents of small children, it was understood that once their kids progressed to a certain age, they too would be welcomed to a job. So let me meander a little bit here. So I did put together the backgrounds of the 56 signatories of the Declaration of Independence, because my argument is that these were a lot of, even though they ended up in white collar positions, they had blue collar backgrounds, and I argue that blue collar backgrounds are more important than white collar backgrounds. So when I went in alphabetical order. So John Adams was the first guy. And there's something very common that happened during these times. So even Josiah Bartlett, he began practicing medicine at age 21. He was a landowner and he became the only town doctor in his area. Something that I want to work on with you guys, I want to go through an exercise of, let's call it, let's build a town. So when you think of a town, what positions, what professions, what type of people does that town need to thrive? A doctor. Every town needs a doctor. I guess maybe even every town needs a nurse. Every town needs, what are some of the other ones? I guess, do you need a lawyer? Every town needs a lawyer. Every town needs some artisans. But I'm talking about like wood guys and steel guys and like a furniture builder, right? And then whatever steel artisans make, right? Like for furnishings and stuff like that. Every town needs its farmer. Every town needs its rancher. Every town needs its merchants, right? Artisans. I'm not going to say teacher, but you want somebody who will help teach the children. So I guess every town needs a teacher, right? And so start thinking about the things that every town needs. That's going to be important. I want to work on that exercise with you guys. Let's build a town. Okay, so with John Adams, what they did back then, and I'm going to argue it's what they did through World War I. So if you were going to become a bookkeeper, you studied under a current bookkeeper. So this meant that family relationships within a town, were very important. So there was no need for the employment application. There was no need for the background check. Families relied on their reputation with each other, right? So you want your son to become a lawyer. You found a current lawyer, and your son studied under that lawyer, and that child then became a lawyer themselves. A.G. Spalding, before he helped American baseball become professional, studied under two men, one as a merchant, the second one I can't remember what it was. But you knew your neighbors and you relied on your family's reputation to get a job for your children. There's nothing wrong with that. So what was wrong with that? If you had no ties to the town because you came from Germany fleeing whatever it is you did over there, you couldn't move up the ranks. You couldn't gain power, right? You had to build your own power. In addition, you had to change the laws. Internships, I'm going to argue that internships are also a Jewish creation. And what's funny is, you get like Africans and low-income Latinos arguing, oh, you have to have money to get an internship because you're basically like worse off than a slave because you work for free. I'm going to argue that's by design. But what people don't realize, it's not whites pricing you out of the market. It's actually Jews. Whites get a lot of blame for a lot of stuff because of their skin tone. Jews are fair in their skin tone too, right? There's an article that once the Trevor Bauer stuff finally receives some sort of resolution, I'm going to talk about something related to that. And I'm going to prove that Jews have been able to get by because their skin tone matches the white American skin tone. So therefore, people confuse it. So again, I'm rewatching a lot of stuff, and the first time I watched this stuff, I didn't catch the number of references that are made to Judaism. I didn't even realize the number of actors that are actually Jewish. It's crazy. And that's what I'm saying. We've got to start separating a lot of stuff to say, okay, that dude looks white, but he's not white. Therefore, all this blame being tossed at whites is actually should be redirected at this culture. People need to start realizing a lot of things. So let me finish this paragraph in this book. Okay, so this was important, right? Groups of people advanced beyond their old hunting grounds at a rate of only 2 to 3 miles per generation. No globalism existed. There was enough, however, to populate the world in some tens of thousands of years. Some scholars have suggested that such advanced human creatures may have emerged independently in different parts of the world rather than Africa alone. Super important, right? Super important, because they're trying to tell us that the world begins with the African. It does not. IQ proves that there's no way. The current state of Africa and the current state of, even though America's falling apart, it shows the IQ differences. Baseball shows us IQ differences. The majority of strikeouts came post-integration, not before, and the majority of those who struck out the most are diversity, not white. IQ differences all over the place. All over the place. Okay, in any case, by 10,000 BCE, members of the Homo sapiens sapiens species could be found throughout the world. By that time, it was the only human species left. All humans today, be they European, Australian, Aborigine, or African, belong to the same subspecies of human being. So this book, it's 2004. It's got his wokeism, right? They were already woke in 2004. This book wants to argue that we originate from the African. But again, IQ differences can prove that's false. Tom Brady's the rule, not the exception. Okay, so I am several minutes in. I will come back to the background of the founders at a later time, but I wanted to toss that out there today. Okay, so the revolution was effected before the war commenced. The revolution was in the minds of hearts of the people. John Adams, 1818. So why? So England ruled the colonists. 66% of the colonists were English, and then you had your Scottish, your Irish, some French, some Spanish, Wales, Dutch, German, right? So, but nonetheless, the majority of the colonists came from England. Therefore, it makes sense that England was the ruling party of the colonists, or the ruling government. Because England and France were engaged in a pissing contest with each other, both countries were spending more than their resources allowed. Therefore, to make up ground, taxes went up. Taxes went up more severely on the colonists than probably the English in England, and the colonists didn't like it. They probably already had England out of their mind at that point. They felt independent, right? They probably felt like they were their own country. So to exert power over the colonists, the English had to flex their muscle, right? They had to flex their muscle. So the stamp tax uproar, the costly 7 Years' War, which ended in 1763, marked a new relationship between Britain and her transatlantic colonies. A revolution in British colonial policy precipitated the American Revolution. Victory-flushed Britain emerged from the conflict possessing one of the biggest empires in the world, and also, less happily, the biggest debt. It amounted to 140 million pounds, about half of which had been incurred in defending the American colonies. So, okay, England kind of was like, it's payback time, and they kind of had the right to do it. But these colonists, I mean, dude, anybody who braves the seas at that point, who works to survive a New England winter, isn't somebody who is going to accept authoritarian rule, even though it's kind of merited, right? I mean, these guys, I mean, the American English, the colonist was even different from the English who stayed behind in England, right? Totally different. That colonist was the rebellious one. So they were not going to take this lying down, right? Okay. British officials wisely had no intention of asking the colonials to help pay off that crushing burden, but London felt that Americans should be asked to defray 1/3 the cost of maintaining a garrison of some 10,000 redcoats, presumably for the colony's own protection. So they backdoored them, right? Their goal was to backdoor them. Prime Minister George Grenville, an honest and able financier, not noted for tact, moved vigorously, dedicated to efficiency. Oh gosh, that's like the analytics of 1763, I guess. Efficiency, and it takes how many people to tell Mookie Betts when to run? It takes how many people to tell Joe Kelly which pitch to pitch? It takes how many people to, who's another one? Justin Turner, when to swing. It takes how many people to make Dave Roberts look good, even though Bob Guerin is sitting right there next to him. All right. Sure, buddies. Sure. Dedicated to efficiency, Mr. Prime Minister George Grenville aroused the resentment of the colonials in 1763 by ordering the British Navy to enforce the navigation laws. He also secured from Parliament the so-called Sugar Act of 1764, the first law ever passed by that body for raising revenue in the colonies for the crown. Among various provisions, it increased the duty on foreign sugar imported from the West Indies. After bitter protests from the colonials, the duties were lowered substantially and the agitation died down. But resentment was kept burning by the Quartering Act of 1765. It required certain colonies to provide food and quarters for British troops. Then in the same year, 1765, Grenville imposed the most onerous measure of all, a stamp tax, to raise revenues to support the new military force. So how was England going to pay for all these new laws to enforce? No. How was England going to pay for the military force that was going to enforce all the new tax laws Well, they had to raise revenue to pay off their debt, and they had to raise revenue to pay the troops. Otherwise, the troops would abandon their posts. Makes sense, right? It's like a construction crew. They keep showing up as long as you're paying them. The minute you don't pay them, they stop showing up. Oh, well, if your walls are half painted or whatever the case might be, right? So, maybe we should close the door. Close the door and turn on the light. All right, I'm going to try something to see how this looks, because I guess they're very landscape happy. Does that look okay? That looks very bright, huh? It's still capturing some of it, but it's capturing me more than it's capturing the landscape sounds. It's okay. All right. So we're going to do this because people are very landscape happy out there right now. Apologies for the light's really bright. Hang on. Give me a second, okay? Okay, let's see if the landscaping has stopped. I just prefer this. So we see the beginnings of the revolution, right? You've got England. I mean, we could wonder, right? How different would things have been if, how different would things have been had England not been in debt? Like, stuff we'll never know, right? It's just the way it is. So I'm approaching the hour. This is good stuff. I hope you guys are as enthused about American history. I think it's really great. History is awesome. And we're going to get into the parallels of 2021 and 1763 to 1780 pretty soon. And so, let me start wrapping up, and we will pick this up tomorrow. So what am I doing this week? I am talking about American history, 1763 through 1780. I'm hoping to help people understand the parallels between that time period and now. I mean, wait until we get into why we have no unlawful search and seizures, why we have trial by jury, why we have no excessive fines, why we have freedom of speech, why we have freedom of religion, why the founders did their best to say, hey, you know what, we realize that we haven't thought of everything, but we're going to give you the 10th Amendment so that the states can figure out. I mean, talk about having some awesome foresight, right? Like, we're seeing into the future. Like, that's pretty. Come on, man. Those men were intelligent. And it's not that long. It's only a few pages long. I'll go through the timeline with you guys tomorrow, and we can kind of go from there. I'll figure out, maybe I need to figure out the background noise tonight so that the landscape happy people, we're not capturing those sounds anymore. I'm gonna have to listen to this today to see how overwhelming the sounds are, but I'll figure it out. Great software though. Great software. And keep in mind, I want to go through an exercise with you guys. Let's build a town. Because those of you on video games and drugs, if you feel like you have nothing to live for. That's why you escape into the internet. Guess what? There is a place for you. It just means that you're going to have to exert physical effort. It means you're going to have to keep your body free of drugs and alcohol. It means you're going to have to deal with other people who may be mean to you. It means that life is going to change. And I understand that Americans are sick, right? A lot of Americans are sick in 2021. And I understand that digital nerds probably can't handle physical work, but physical work is what built America. And it's what's going to keep America moving forward once we figure out how to get through everything that's going on right now. I mean, this example of Shoeless Joe Jackson, where he grew up, is amazing. And that's what I mean. Once you form your Ben Franklin groups, you can figure out what your neighborhood lacks. You can figure out people's skills. You can sniff out the FBI informants. And you can rebuild. There are a lot of opportunities, so much opportunity out there right now. I'm not going to talk about them online because we have to be able to swoop in first. So much opportunity, so much opportunity. So if you made it all the way to the end, thank you very much. I will be back here tomorrow, 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, or as close to it as possible. I'm going to keep talking about the parallels between the 1776 through about 1780 and 2021. The government is not your friend. They know it. They're afraid that more people are going to realize it. If you're watching what's happening in Australia, that's what happens when you give up your guns. But the Australians, I think, can figure it out. Basically, safety in numbers. Don't get caught alone, right? A police force can beat up an individual. What happens when they're faced with a group? Different, right? So maybe it's about employing safety in numbers. So lots and lots and lots to talk about. I'll figure out the background noise situation tonight, and then we can kind of go from there. So again, if you made it to the end, thank you very much. I hope everybody enjoys their Tuesday. If you don't know the current status of your health, you will serve yourself well by finding out as soon as possible. We don't know how far any of this is going to go. Don't be that person that weighs down everybody else. If stuff progresses the way some people believe, there will be no time, no room for feeling sorry people who weren't proactive during this time. You should have technically been proactive since March 2020 in getting stuff done. No one's gonna have time to feel sorry for you if stuff gets really out of hand. Obviously, it's about prepping, but it's about being proactive about yourself. Don't be the one that weighs everybody else down. There will be no room for that. You will get left behind. I mean, that's a harsh reality. I guess that's a little bit of the Darwinism in me, but you need to figure this stuff out too for yourself. So I'm trying to end on a happy note, but it's not easy. It's not easy when you're being realistic about these things and we don't know where everything's going. So I will see you guys back here tomorrow as close to 8 a.m. as Pacific Standard Time as possible. And hopefully I'll have this background noise stuff figured out by then. Have a wonderful Tuesday. See you back here tomorrow. Thank you very much.